Honestly, I'm very impressed. Good work, good work. I love it. Well, this morning, I want to kind of introduce this basic idea of a philosophical question to you guys. And that philosophical question is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? So if you've ever studied philosophy, thought about it, or maybe you've had a friend or a parent kind of ask this question to you at some point. And kind of my plan for us this morning is we're going to look at what happens when the unstoppable force of God's love, God's care, His grace and mercy meet this immovable object of humanity's cunningness, deceit, and sinful nature. And I could not be more excited. And the way that we're going to go about this is we're going to look at a story format of the character of Jacob. So if you guys have your Bibles, go ahead and open up to Genesis chapter 32, and we're going to start in verse 22. So Genesis 32, 22. And my game plan this morning is to give kind of like a story format, but really a summary of the first major years of Jacob's life. And then we're going to dive into Scripture in Genesis 32, where we're going to see a life-changing and honestly a history-changing event that's going to go down in the form of a wrestling match. So if you have not read about this before, it's pretty wild stuff. Like if you have not studied it before, highly recommend, tune in. It's going to get pretty crazy pretty quick. So if we have that slide of the family tree real quick, let's go ahead and open it up to there. So last week, Matthew was up here and he talked about Abraham and Isaac a little bit. So Isaac is married to Rebekah, and we're just going to leave that family tree up there for a little bit. So what happened, there's a huge event in the life of Abraham about something about a covenant. Do you guys remember that from last week? I'm going to take the silence as a yes, by the way. So yeah, I'm just going to assume that yes, you remember. So God made a covenant to Abraham saying that he was going to multiply his family and that through the lineage of Abraham, that his descendants would outnumber the stars and a great nation would come from him. And then we talked a little bit about that Abraham and his wife Sarah were super old before they had their son Isaac. And we're picking up where Isaac is married to his wife Rebekah, and they find out that they are having a child. They're super excited about this, and if you remember a little bit about the history of Israel and really just the culture in that day, we know that the oldest boy should receive the inheritance and the blessing from the parents. So when Isaac and Rebekah find out that they're having a baby, they couldn't be more excited, except for something really crazy goes down. Because when Rebekah is giving birth, not only do they have a boy, they have twin boys. Any twins in the room? Okay, so twins, you guys know, you're born pretty close together, right? So if you're born within minutes of each other or even hours, and one of you is like technically the oldest, yeah, and then the other one is the younger sibling, and you're like, but we're the exact same age, that's exactly what's about to happen with Isaac and Rebekah's two sons, Esau and Jacob. So Esau is born first. So Esau is the older brother. And when you think of Esau, I want you to think, have you guys seen Duck Dynasty before? Okay, if you know anything about Duck Dynasty, this is one of the characters, Jace, on there. And so he had, let's see, do we have the picture of Jace up there? I think we can do it. Yes, so Jace, right? Big beard, long hair. He's just a wild mountain man. He loves to hunt and fish, and it describes that he's got like these rough, calloused hands. And then when you think of the little brother, when you think of Jacob, I want you to think of this character, which you all might know and love, all right? He's a little bit more of the pretty boy. You know, he's a little bit more refined and everything. And so when you think of Esau, the older brother, think of the mountain man. And then when you think of Jacob, younger brother, think of Zac Efron, all right? I took a few liberties on that one, but that might help with our memory. So we know Esau is the one who's supposed to receive the blessing. But the name Jacob literally means heel grabber, because when Esau and Jacob were born, Jacob was grabbing the heel of his older brother. They're born seconds apart, but Esau's the one who's supposed to receive the inheritance, the blessing, and everything like that. And so now, Jacob is not really going to have much. So Jacob is kind of a trickster. He's kind of always got a trick up his sleeve. And so Jacob, and his mom was in on this plan. I know, a little crazy. But Jacob decides, I need to get the blessing. I need to get the inheritance from my dad. So Isaac is getting really old, and his vision is starting to fade. Once you get past your 30s, it's just downhill from there. So Isaac is he's getting old. I just offended everybody, all the leaders in the room. I'm so sorry, all right? So I had no idea, all right. That made me laugh. So we see that Isaac he's getting really old, and he really can't see. So he's kind of he has to feel around to know where everything is. And he knows that the older brother Esau, because he's got a little bit of a deeper voice, and he's got all that facial hair. He's got the long hair. So Jacob decides, you know what? In order for me to get the inheritance early from my dad, I'm going to dress up like Esau would, and then I'm going to go try to get it. So he puts on this wool fake beard and some fake long hair, and then he goes to his dad and he talks in a big loud voice, and it's like, I want my inheritance now. And Isaac up there, he's a little suspicious. He's like, this just feels a little funky. So he reaches out and he's like, well, it feels like a big beard and long hair. So he says, all right, you can have it. So the whole time that this is happening, Esau is out hunting. So Jacob steals the inheritance, and what do you think that Esau is going to do when he comes back and finds out that Jacob has taken a bunch of the inheritance? He's going to kill him. He is beyond the point of furious. So Jacob, out of honestly just common knowledge and being, having a little bit of the little bro syndrome, he realizes he's going to kill me. I am going to do what anybody would do. I'm going to go miles away to a different part of the country and stay with my uncle. So that's exactly what he does. So he takes all of the stuff and he heads out to stay with his uncle Laban. Now, Jacob arrives, and when he starts talking to Laban, he notices a very pretty young lady, Laban's daughter. Not just his daughter, his youngest daughter. So we see that Jacob sees Rachel, the younger daughter, and goes, Laban, I really want to marry her. She's not just pretty, she's the one. I am positive she is the one. And so Laban does what any good future father-in-law would do, and he says, great, if you work for me for 7 years, you can have her, all right? And so Jacob's just like, okay, what am I going to do here? I'm in. I am madly in love with this girl. I am all in on this. So he works for 7 whole years to marry the love of his life, and it's their wedding day. He's worked it off. He is ready to marry this beautiful girl. She's walking down the aisle, and back in those days, they would wear these big, thick veils. You guys might have seen a veil that a bride might wear at a wedding. But this one is a little bit thicker. You can't really see the person, but it gets to the best part of the ceremony. The pastor there says, you may now kiss the bride. He lifts up the veil, and it's her sister. He's just married Leah, Rachel's older sister. So he just worked for 7 years and married the wrong daughter. That's a heartbreaking situation, right? That's some wild TV show stuff. So at this point, Jacob is furious. He goes to Laban, and Laban does what any good father-in-law would do. You can marry Rachel. Oh, it must have been a mix-up. Crazy thing happened. If you work for me for another 7 years, then you can have Rachel. And Jacob is furious, and so they kind of make a deal where, okay, you can marry Rachel now. Crazy. But then you have to work for me for another 7 years. Jacob says, you know what? I'm going to do it because I'm all about this girl. I'm crazy in love with her. So he works it off for another 7 years, and you can imagine living with your in-laws for 14 years, working for your father-in-law. If you're married in the room, you know that that's not a good situation, right? This is just not good in any way, shape, or form. So it kind of gets to the end of the 14 years, and Jacob goes to Laban, and he's like, hey, we've loved living here. It's been okay. I want to go start my own family. We want to move. Like, we want to go do our own thing. And so Laban, they make a deal where Laban ends up giving Jacob some sheep and some things to kind of start off with. And Jacob, remember, like, he's kind of that trickster, that con man. He's able to kind of get ahead by sneaking past people. That's how he took the birthright from Esau. And so Jacob uses a ton of these farming tricks and tricks Laban a little bit. And now we see that Jacob, in a farming community, kind of becomes the equivalent of like hundreds of or thousands of dollars, or even like a millionaire. Jacob becomes extremely, extremely wealthy. So how do you think that Laban and all of his kids, all of his sons being farmers and kind of making like minimum wage, barely able to get by, feel about their in-law, the brother-in-law, who's married to their sisters, making all of this money? Not very good. So tensions start to rise, and Jacob is like, hey, we got to go. We're getting out of here. So Jacob gets all of his stuff again and starts going. But where is Jacob going to go? He has no more family to stay with, and he realized that he has to go back home. But what do you think is waiting for him when he gets back home? Esau. And did he leave things in good rapport with Esau when he left? No. Do you think that same little brother fear might still be there? Like, if you did something really bad to your older brother, older sister, and then like years go by, he still has that fear of like, Esau's not just mad, Esau is going to kill me. And rightfully so. So Jacob is just freaking out. So they start heading back, and as they're running away, Laban catches up to him, and Laban says, hey, you go do your thing. I'm going to stay here. We may not like each other, but we're just going to make peace. You go, I'm going to stay, and we're at peace from now on. We're not going to come after each other. So the story's about to get pretty crazy in case it wasn't already. So Jacob starts heading back, and this whole time, it's this slow buildup of, I am going to encounter my brother who I totally wronged, who I stole from, who has every right to kill me. What's going to happen? So leading up to this, he hears that his older brother Esau is just a few miles away. And so he says, you know what? I'm going to send a couple servants ahead, and I'm going to send some sheep with him just to give us a little present to kind of be like, hey, bro, we all right? Like trying to feel it out and everything. And the servants come back that Esau has rejected the presents and that there's 400 soldiers with him. Not a great situation. So if he wasn't worried before, he is terrified right now. He's on the edge of he's about to meet his brother after all of these years. He's standing by this river, and so he's just mortified out of his mind. He's sinned over and over and over again, and he's been a trickster and a con man and just done so many wrong things in his life. And now all these things that he's done wrong are about to catch up with him in the next morning. So it's the evening before he meets his brother Esau. So he sends the whole family away. He sends all of his sheep and cows and everything away to the other side of the river. And he's by himself, just mortified, terrified of what's about to go down. And this is where we're going to read in Genesis chapter 32, verse 22. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his female servants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the fork of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else he had. And Jacob was left alone. This is the wildest drop ever. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. So, what just went down? Jacob is full of anxiety, standing by the edge of this river. He sent everybody away, and then a man appears, and they start wrestling. What? Like, this is absolutely crazy. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight into what's actually happening here, because it explains it in a little bit when we read a little bit farther. So this man that Jacob starts wrestling with, this is known as a theophany. So a theophany is the physical presence or physical manifestation of God in human or angelic form. So Jacob is on the edge of a river, mortified for his life, crying out to God, and God shows up in human form, and they just start wrestling. Like WWE SmackDown. And it says that they wrestled all night. And then at the end of it, they're wrestling back and forth, and Jacob is just clinging on to him because he's so worried and desperate. And you know what God does? He touches his hip, and it knocks it out of the socket. That sounds extremely painful. Has anybody like had a dislocated shoulder or finger, and it's like all you think about and it's there? And the hip being dislocated is beyond painful, and it was just touched by God. This is crazy. And then the next verse, this is God talking, and he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." So the sun is coming up. But Jacob said, "I'm not going to let you go. I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Because remember, Jacob means the heel grabber, or deceiver, kind of that trickster. And God says this, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." So then Jacob, this thing that just happened is absolutely crazy. So Jacob, all his life, who has been named like the trickster, the heel grabber, he's lived up to that. Right? We see over and over again that he's kind of just tricked people into getting his own way and tricked people so that he can get ahead. And now God has wrestled with him. And as God is walking away from him, and Jacob is just crying out like, "Please give me a blessing. I'm so terrified. I'm about to meet my brother. Please, like, don't leave me. I need you." And God says, "Your name is no longer Jacob," as in you're no longer a trickster. You're no longer a heel grabber, but you are Israel, which we're about to see what this means. Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So God blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose up as he passed Peniel, limping because of the hip. Therefore, this is like a random tidbit that we're about to see about the whole nation of Israel. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. This was like, random tidbit that we were talking about. So all of Israel, all of the descendants, can we put the family tree back up here for a second? So after Jacob, he had all of these descendants, like the 12 tribes. So Jacob's name gets changed to Israel, and we see that he has 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Judah, or the 12 tribes of Israel, and we see from that great nation of Israel gets formed after Jacob's name gets changed from there. And we see that all of Israel does not eat the place that God touched Jacob. So anytime they were eating an animal, they would not eat that part of the animal because that was blessed by God. But what I really want us to see in this is that Jacob had opportunity after opportunity throughout his life to trust God. Like all the way from his birth, that he had an opportunity to be blessed by God. But no, Jacob just took control. He kept tricking people in order to get ahead. And it wasn't until all of his actions catch up with him, when he's about to get killed is what he's nervous about, that's when he starts running to God and starts begging God for a blessing. Then he's like, I can't do this on my own. I'm incapable to do this on my own. So God, now I trust you all of a sudden because I can't do it on my own. It wasn't until he's about to face the consequences of his actions that he finally starts begging for God's presence and God's blessings in his life rather than trying to make his own. So Jacob's at the end of his rope. He has nowhere to go, nothing to do. He's about to face Esau and face his sure-to-be death. Let's read in chapter 33, starting in verse 1. What's it say? Jacob lifted up his eyes, looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants, and he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to him, embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So we see that this sure to be death that Jacob's about to face, or now Israel is about to face, he's pleaded with God, said, I need you. I need your presence. I need a blessing from you. And God answers that. Despite all of the stuff that Jacob has done throughout his entire life, tricking people, taking advantage of people, deceiving people, we see that God met him where he was at and still not only blessed him, but he was with him. He wrestled with him that entire night. And so I think some of the key takeaways from this story is as we start to go into small groups. I think one of like the modern applications that we can take from this is that no matter where we've been, how the junk that we've done, no matter how far or bad we've messed up, we see that God still meets us where we're at. Going back to that question that I introduced to us, that immovable object of humanity's sinfulness, this no matter how messed up and broken we are, we see that the overwhelming, the unstoppable force of God's love, nature, and desire to bless his children is always more powerful than anything that we can do. And this is just one example that we look ahead and see that this was fulfilled on the cross. Like Jesus he finished the story on the cross. That no matter how much we've messed up, like us, or like Jacob with this, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. But we see that God, just as he wrestled with Jacob, that he just met him where he was, that God still pursues us no matter how far that we run. So as we're breaking into small groups, I just want to remind us of one thing here, that Jacob's life, like if the character of Jacob is not something that we should try to imitate, but rather the main thing that we should draw from the story of Jacob is that no matter how bad we mess up, that God forgives, pursues, and loves in all times and all circumstances. I'm going to pray, and then we can go to small groups. Jesus, thank you for today, and thank you that we can just read and study and even just get an overview of the man that Jacob was, and you redeemed him to become Israel. Jesus, I pray that we can just draw the right things from this story and recognize that you pursue us despite our sin and our flaw. And God, I pray that we can just carry this out into all the days of our lives. We love you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, y'all are good to go to groups.